And in fact, if you go back through history and you hear of this group, a partnership for a drug-free America, I mean drug-free indeed, it's utopian, but do you know who the original founders and supporters of that were?
I think you said Philip Morris or the alcohol.
The tobacco industry and the cigarette industry. I mean, drug-free indeed, but from a merchandising standpoint, once again, it's well within their own economic self-interest to reinforce that distinction between licit drugs and illicit drugs. So there's all of that. And then, of course, there are other people, good people, who just don't believe that we should do this, because what the law says is a statement to our people, to our children, about what is and is not appropriate. But they have to understand, and more people are, that just because we do not have cigarettes illegal for people over 18 does not mean the government condones it. In fact, we take great steps to show that we don't, but nevertheless, if we were to make cigarettes illegal, we'd just add to the problems by bringing Al Capone and Frank Nitti into the cigarette distribution business. So people need to understand that as well.
So do you have any idea of the ratio of infrastructure to, say, drug users? It must be really high.
I don't know. I can guarantee you that I will, as a government, I will reduce drug usage in our country simply by getting tougher on prosecutions. Why do I say that? Because the only way they can find out if people are really using drugs or not is to ask them. And so if you have somebody saying, I'm from federal government and I'm standing on your doorway with a clipboard, are you using drugs? If there's a lot more prosecution, you're much less likely to say you are. So just simply by growling and showing that we're putting people in prison, that will have fewer people self-report. And if you have more slack prosecutions, more people will tell the truth. And so all of the government information comes from people self-reporting. I mean, how reliable is that? Even that says that the federal government statistics say that about 20 million Americans are using marijuana on a regular basis. Now, I think it has to be more than that, but those are the ones that self-reported. Once again, it's the largest cash crop in the state of California. Somebody is using it. So even a minimum of 20 million people. But we lead the world in putting something like 2.2 million people in prison. What are we going to do with the other 18 million? I mean, there comes a time when it's simply not a viable threat to say, I'm going to jail you, I'm going to put you in prison. So we just must go to a different system, and we will. Eventually, I promise, I guarantee, anyone who will listen, 2 years after we finally change away from this failed and hopeless policy of drug prohibition, everybody will link arms, look back astonished that we could have perpetuated such a failed system for so long. Drug prohibition is the largest failed policy in the history of the United States, second only to slavery. And once we finally repeal it, we will absolutely be agog that we didn't do this years before.
Much like alcohol is now.
Same thing, yes.
Before you go, could you explain to us the 6 groups that benefit from illegal drugs?
Well, sure. First of all, of course, we have the big-time drug dealers. They are making hundreds of millions of dollars tax-free. They're laughing at us. When we finally seize a ton of cocaine or something like that, you know, it's just a symptom of the depth of the problem, because for every ton we seize, we easily fail to seize something between 10 and 15 tons, because we really only seize between 5 and 10% of the illegal drugs. So it's just a cost of doing business. The second group of people actually are those in the juvenile gangs, like we said before, that are making money by selling drugs. Most of them get their primary source of revenue from that. The third group, honestly, is those people in law enforcement that are being paid big tax money in order to fight against the first group. And I'm not at all concerned. Once we come to our senses and repeal alcohol or drug prohibition, we're not going to run cops out of business or judges. They're just going to have to do different things. There are many, many phases of our society that are not met today, and we would start to do that, like fraud. People who are undercover officers might have to shave their beards and keep regular hours and work in the burglary detail, but they're not going to be out of a job. But they're so far coming out ahead. The fourth group, honestly, are the people who are in the private sector, who are making money because of increased crime, prison guards union, burglary alarm systems, etc. The fifth group, honestly, are people who are in elective office. They get elected and re-elected by talking tough with regard to the war on drugs. Not smart, just tough. And in fact, honestly, and I've seen this as a judge for 25 years, the tougher we get with regard to drug prosecution, literally the softer we get with regard to the prosecution of everything else, because we only have so many resources. And if we're spending them on nonviolent drug offenses, we literally are not spending them on trying to prosecute and investigate robbery, rape, and murder. So that is a problem as well. And the sixth group of people, this is a hard one. I love my country, but the terrorist organizations of the world are winning because of the war on drugs. They get more money because of drug prohibition and the sale of illegal drugs than anything else. It is literally prohibition being the golden goose of terrorism, and if we really cared about fighting terrorism, we would adopt the one thing that would be the most critical: take away their funding, repeal drug prohibition, and I regret to say that our government doesn't care that much because we won't even talk about it. Who is losing? Everybody else, particularly our children. Why? Because, once again, it's easier for young people to get marijuana or any other drug if they want to than it is alcohol, because it's unregulated and therefore the bad guys don't ask for ID. And the second is, I've seen this in juvenile court. If I'm an adult drug dealer, ask yourself, how much risk-taking can I buy for $50 in cash from a 15, 16-year-old boy or girl in the inner city or anywhere else? And the answer is quite a bit. And soon I can use them as gophers, lookouts, couriers, whatever. They're a cheap source of labor. And every time then, once their reliability is established, I will trust them to go out and sell small amounts of drugs in the community. Why would I do such a heinous thing? That's easy. More money for the kid, more money for me.
So the young people are being recruited to do the dirty work of
Ask yourself, if you have a 15, 16-year-old selling drugs in his or her community, who is he or she going to sell to, Desiree? You and me? Nonsense. They're going to sell to their 14, 15, 16-year-old peers, thus recruiting more children for that very lifestyle of drug usage and drug selling that we're trying so hard to keep away from them, and it is caused by drug prohibition. They are not selling Jim Beam bourbon to each other on their high school campuses. They're selling ecstasy or methamphetamines or marijuana all the time. Let's come to our senses. Let's vote in favor of Proposition 19. Let's stop moralizing about this issue and start managing it, and we'll be far, far better off than we are today.
It's a very stubborn problem, isn't it?
It is. It's gone on for decades.
Okay, now LEAP is a great organization, but you have to be a member of law enforcement to join.
No, actually you don't. They will accept other members.
So is that what you recommend for us normal Joes? How do we get involved in this cause?
You don't look like a Joe to me,
well,
but
James?
Indeed. There are lots of things we can do. There's the Drug Policy Alliance. You can just talk to your friends. You're doing a great deal here by just promoting an honest, open conversation. I'm on a lot of radio talk shows, and most of the hosts on the radio now are really pretty much understand and favor this. I was on another one yesterday, and all of the callers understood, and they didn't. They're all in California, San Luis Obispo actually, and yes, they all understand. So just talk about it. Just give yourself permission to discuss this. And when I sign copies of my book that you mentioned, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed, what I almost always sign is, it's okay to discuss drug policy.
So just become proactive.
Just allow an open, honest conversation to take place. If we do that, that's the only thing that's keeping us from coming to a better system. Let's get at it.
Okay, our guest today has been Judge James Gray. He is an outspoken member of LEAP, and if you would like to know more about LEAP, you could visit their website at...
Yes, it's copssaylegalizedrugs.com.
copssaylegalizedrugs.com. I would like to thank you for watching and remind you that if you have something to scream about, you can visit our website at www.standupandscream.net. Thank you for coming.
You're welcome. It's good to be with you.
You too.
Sorry.